Good afternoon or good evening, everyone, and welcome to Opportunity Desk, the only place guaranteeing you perfect information, accurate and independent. You are right now sitting with the Binja. Yes, I'm Congolese, currently residing in South Africa, and I am going to be your host tonight, along with the amazing entrepreneur, former management, or
Danger.
rather communications, rather manager. Courtney Gehle, who will be prompting you guys and telling us rather to rock a job opportunity. But before you get a job, you need an interview. So Courtney tonight will be telling us a little bit more about how to get on tips and tricks, and she'll be telling us a little bit more about her experience as a person within getting
Danger.
a job interview. Good evening, Courtney.
And thank you so much to everyone joining in from around the world. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So maybe a brief introduction for our viewers, please.
Sure. So, a little bit about me. My name is Courtney Gehle. I am a 25-year-old South African. I am a change agent, passionate about young people, passionate about supporting young people to create a difference. I've been involved in activism and youth-led sustainable development for the last 5 years. I am the co-founder of the Greenline and the co-founder of an organization called the Better Tomorrow Movement. I also worked briefly with the United Nations in South Africa, and I now am the communications manager of Global Changemakers. And kind of in this time, over the journey of the last 5 years, I've gained some really valuable tips and tricks about how to execute a virtual job interview. And virtual job interview is a little bit different from an in-person job interview. There's certain things that you need to take into account. So I look forward to sharing that with you all today. Kind of my experience, I guess I've been on both sides of the screen, so to speak. I've been interviewed and I've interviewed people. I built a virtual team for the Better Tomorrow movement and grew our movement into over 40 countries working virtually. And currently I run a virtual team of 67 volunteers. So this is kind of where I draw this experience from. And so with that introduction, I guess, can I get straight into it, guys? Yes?
So,
All right.
yeah. Thank you so much. Wow, you're like one of those people with a lot of hats to carry. I mean, I was just listening, and that was a list, you know. Oh man, that's incredible for a 24-year-old. I must say, you are Courtney. Good job, Courtney. Yeah. So Courtney, one of my first questions is your first job interview, was it virtual or was it physical?
Physical. Yeah, it was
Was it
really scary.
Before we dive into the questions, I first want to hear your experience with the first job interview so that our viewers can, have some sort of relation as to how they can also, conquer this whole fear because everybody gets scared on the first job interview. How are you feeling? How did you conquer this whole stigmatization of I'm new, I'm inexperienced, am I going to get this job? These big guys are standing next to me. How did that go for you, Courtney?
Sure. Well, I have a whole bunch of tips and tricks that I've prepared to share with you guys. So I don't know how you'd like to do it. I don't know if you'd like me to kind of just get into it, how to prepare for a job interview, how to set up for a virtual job interview, and then how to handle the interview. Or would you like to ask questions? How do you think would be best to go about it?
I would rather prefer we do it your way. You tell us, and then because sometimes people write down questions, but you already have answers for them. So maybe with regards to how you do your thing, you can actually answer them as you go. But do remind that you may maybe need to pause in here and there so that I could ask you a bit more further because people have the pens and paper waiting to take notes from the great Courtney. Give us the go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much. So, guys, yeah, there's a lot that I want to share with you today, and I'm going to kind of just throw all the tips and tricks at you that I have learned. So I'm glad that you have your pens and papers available. But on that note, I just wanted to say that everything that I'm going to speak about today is available online. So if you miss something that I say, or you want to learn more about something specific, just type it into your search engine. There's really some incredibly valuable resources out there that can support you in either preparing for an interview or in landing an interview, how to handle yourself. So really, there is a lot of support out there for you, and it doesn't have to be this big, scary thing, although it really sometimes can be. I mean, I know me personally, I get really, really scared when I have interviews. So I want to share with you what I've learned to hopefully remove some of that fear from you guys. Yeah, so I think for me, the biggest thing that I want you guys to take away from today is that when it comes to applying for jobs and when it comes to job interviews, preparation and effort really, really go a long, long way. And that's what makes the difference between you getting your dream job and you not. So, what the tips and tricks that I'm going to share with you today are, they're going to be a lot. And if you use them on their own, they probably won't make a difference. But if you combine everything that I talked to you about today, it can really be the difference between you and someone else for the role that you want. So, with that in mind, I think I'm gonna get right into it. Yeah, so basically, I think before, and please excuse me, I'm going to keep looking down at my notes because I really don't want to miss anything. I really want to make sure that you guys are able to learn as much as possible from this. So I guess it bears saying that before you get to the stage where you actually have an interview, there is a lot that goes into applying for a job. Things like social media, in terms of LinkedIn, in terms of how to optimize your CV or your resume, the cover letter that you send, as well as cold emails that you might send. These are some really key components, and all of them have best practices that you can follow in order to really make sure that the effort that you put into getting a job or landing that interview, rather, is really put to good use. So before you even get to the interview stage, I highly recommend that you really focus on your resume, your cover letter, the emails that you're sending, optimizing your LinkedIn profile, and all of this can be found online. I would go into it today, but there's just so much to cover that I'll be here for the next 2 hours. So what I'm going to focus on today is how to handle the interview itself. All right, so you've got the interview, you've put in the work, you've optimized all the things you need to optimize, and now you have to prepare for the interview for a job or for a volunteering position or whatever role that you've applied for. And so today I'm going to talk to you about how to prepare, how to set up your space, and then how to handle yourself in a virtual interview. And when I talk about a virtual interview, I mean an interview that's taking place on the phone or over a computer. And more these days, what organizations or companies will do is they will have a virtual interview first to see if you are the right kind of person that they're looking for. And then based on that, they'll either invite you for an in-person interview, or in the case of COVID-19, I think all interviews are virtual these days. And so they might just give you the job based off that. So, all right, I will get into it. Okay. So I think I just want to mention this again because it's so important. The key to creating a good impression in an interview is good preparation. It really will make the difference, and the extra effort that you put in really will pay off when it comes to an interview. It's so worth it. So, first steps when preparing for an interview. The first thing to do is to do some further research on the company that you have got an interview with. Research things like, what is their mission? What is their vision? What keywords do they use on their website? Or rather, how do they describe what they do? I think having an understanding of an organization, how they work, and how they talk about their work is really important because it will help you tailor your answers to questions in the interview to suit them. And something like using keywords that they use, or describing what they do in the same way that they describe it, makes them kind of tricks their brain into thinking that you are already a part of their team because you talk like they do. So that's why it's important to kind of get an understanding of the organization that you have an interview with. Secondly, is to research who your interviewers are going to be. Sounds a bit of an odd one, but unless, if you can find out who your interviewers are going to be and do a quick LinkedIn search of them. Find out a little bit more about their professional background and see if you have anything in common. And this is important because when you are having a virtual job interview through a computer screen like this, it's a bit more difficult to form connections than it is if you are in person. And so having something in common with an interviewer, for example, an interview that I did, my interviewer had spent 10 years working in South Africa. And so that was something we had in common and was able to build that connection. So things like that are important to note. The next thing to think about and just make a few notes about is, why do you want this job? And why are you the best person for the job? Now, kind of forgetting all the insecurities that we have as people or imposter syndrome, really think about why you want the job and why you are the best person for the job, and make a few notes and kind of have that. Remember that when you are kind of faced with the nervousness of the interview or the preparation or anything like that. I think it's really important to kind of bear that in mind, and it will come, you'll use it later, you'll see. So make note of that. The next thing to think about when preparing for your interview is, what are the top 5 things that you want the interviewer to remember about you? What are the top 5 things that you want the interviewer to remember about you? I mean, this could be things like you work well in a team, or you are a good problem solver, or you have good marketing skills. Whatever it is, what do you want the interviewer to remember about you? And make a note of those 5 things, because as you kind of start to develop your thinking around the interview and how you'll take the interview, just keep that in the back of your mind, because it's really important for you to kind of center around what you want the interviewer to take from it. The next thing is the questions that you will get asked. In every job interview, they'll ask you questions about yourself, about your experience, about your skills, and things like this. And so what is important is to prepare a very brief outline for how you want to answer certain questions that you know may come up. So 3 very common ones are: tell me about yourself, why do you want this job, and why are you the person for this job? And there are also a bunch of questions online that you can see, most commonly asked interview questions. But I caution you to kind of go down that rabbit hole, because you'll come across things like 125 most asked interview questions. And then your head kind of spins, because you're like, do I need to have an answer for all of these questions? And the answer is no. They want to get to know you, and they want it to be natural. So why I say prepare an outline and don't prepare exactly what you want to say is because you want it to be natural, and you want there to be some kind of openness for discussion. But something I do want to point out here with kind of the questions that you'd be asked, things like tell me about yourself, why are you good for this role, and other common interview questions, is do Google how to answer them and how to structure the outline of your question, because there are ways that you can really, I guess, optimize your answer is the right word. So just do a quick Google search about how to answer them. There's specific tricks that you can kind of incorporate into that in terms of how to answer those questions. So once you've kind of have your outlines for your basic questions prepared, then read over your cover letter that you submitted, as well as the CV that you submitted, and be prepared to answer questions about your CV or to elaborate on things that you spoke about. So if they ask you about a certain work experience that you spoke about on your cover letter, you need to know what they're talking about. So sometimes it happens that you submit a job application and you hear back from them 3 months later, which I think is probably going to happen during this global pandemic. A lot of companies aren't hiring now, but when the world starts to open up again, they're going to be starting to hire again. So remember what you said in your cover letter and what you said in your CV, so you're clear on what information they have and what information you may need to elaborate on. Next up is to read the job description. What are they looking for? Just remind yourself, make a list of all the skills that they have outlined in the job description, and think about examples where you have exhibited that skill. So for example, if they want someone with problem-solving skills, instead of telling them that you're a good problem solver, show that you can solve problems by talking about an example of a situation where you have solved a problem before. If they want someone who is good at marketing, I feel like I'm using the same skills now, but but you get the point. I'm just giving examples. Uh, show them of an example where a campaign that you did well. Show, don't tell them. And then for the skills that you don't have that are required with the job, think of a few times where there were skills that you didn't have, or things that you didn't know, but you were still able to learn those skills and achieve a really good result. And then share those stories instead. So if they ask you, I mean, for me, for example, something I don't have a lot of experience in is corporate finance. For example, it's a random example, but if someone were to ask me about corporate finance, then I can say, I don't necessarily know a lot about corporate finance, but in in my current role, I didn't know a lot about X, Y, Z either. I taught myself about X, Y, Z, and I was able to achieve this and that positive outcome. And so I'm confident that if I got this role and I had to execute tasks related to corporate finance, that I would be able to use, my tenaciousness, my resilience, my resourcefulness to learn about corporate finance. You get the picture. So have an answer for them instead of saying, I don't know. Have something that you can say to show how you are a good learner, how you can adapt to new skills. And like I said, guys, I'm just like throwing a lot at you. So I hope that this is valuable, and I will take some questions shortly. The next one, number 8, on my list of things to tell you about preparing for an interview. There is I guess, almost a formula that you could say about how to answer questions or how to structure your answers to questions in a job interview to make sure that you come across in the best light. And this is called STAR, STAR, which stands for situation, task, action, and result. Situation, task, action, and result. And this is how you can structure answers. So, for example, when you give the situation, you basically set the scene for them. Tell them some more details about what happened, give them some context, and then talk about the task. What your responsibility was within that situation, and then talk about the action that you took in that situation. And then when you go to results, talk about the positive result that came from the action that you took in the situation. And always make sure that it's a positive result, because if you end on a high, it tends to show that you really know what you're talking about. It has a psychological response. If you end on a high note, that creates something in the brain where people remember you or remember experiences more favorably if it ends on a high note. So STAR, and this is how you can structure questions. So if they ask you, tell us about a time where you experienced conflict in the workplace, you can set the scene for them. You can explain what your role was in the situation. You can explain what you did, and then you can explain the favorable outcome of what happened in that situation. So that is the STAR method. And I spent a bit of time on that because it's really emphasized in a lot of online forums about jobs. A lot of recruiters have spoken about this, and how it's a really good way to answer questions. So I really wanted to share that with you all today. The next thing is, if you are interviewing for a position that is quite technical, expect that they will ask you questions to test your knowledge. So if you are applying for an engineering position or position similar, expect that they will give you case studies and try and test your knowledge by getting you to work through those case studies, or expect that they will give you scenarios where they'll say, if X happened in the office on this day, what would you do? How would you handle it? So be prepared for those kind of questions as well if it's a more technical interview. Then in every interview, what's likely to happen at the end of the interviewer will say, now, do you have any questions for me? And this is where you can really, really stand out from everyone else who is interviewing. So definitely prepare questions that you can ask. The reason why is because if you say, no, I don't have any questions, it shows the interviewer that you haven't given much thought or much research into the role or the organization, and it doesn't leave a good impression, especially to end an interview with. So what I recommend is to prepare 3 to 5 questions that you want to ask the interviewer. Now, in terms of what types of questions to ask, Don't ask questions that have already been answered on their website. So if the information is accessible, don't ask that question. Ask things that show that you understand what the role is or what the company does at a deeper level, and ask things that are thoughtful. Ask the interviewer things that they wouldn't normally get to talk about. So things like, what are you most proud of of working for company XYZ? Or where do you see company XYZ going in the next 5 years? And questions like this, asking what impact will filling this role have on the team? What are some of the core values of the team? Things like this that show that you're really thinking a bit more deeply about the role itself. Really leave a good impression. Don't ask things like how much you'll get paid, how much holiday time you'll have, because that shows that you're self-serving. So don't ask those questions, but ask questions about the team and that show that you are interested in more than just the nitty-gritty of the role itself. And this will really help you stand out, especially again, ending an interview on a high note psychologically will make them remember the interview in a more positive light. And then lastly, in terms of preparation, and then I'll take a break so you guys can ask some questions, is at this point, at the end of your interview, you can, or not at the end of your interview, as part of your interview preparation, you can prepare a reference list. So a list of people that you can be contacted to refer you or talk about your experience, people who've worked with you before. So prepare a list with their names, their title, their organization, contact details, and then 1 or 2 sentences about how their relationship with you. So was it a university professor, a teammate, a boss, that kind of thing. And I say this, and I just want to make a point, don't include your reference list on your CV. It just wastes space on your CV, and it can also, it's irrelevant information at that stage when you're just at the CV stage, and it can also influence their opinion about you, perhaps negatively. So don't include your reference list on your CV, but have it prepared so that if they ask you in the interview, please can you send us a list of your references, you can send it immediately after that. So that is how you prepare for your interview. And next I will go into how to set up. But I think at this point, I'd like to pause, give you guys some time to digest everything and take a few questions. So yeah, guys, if there are any questions that have come through.
Okay. Whoa, that was one heck of a list, but very informative. Definitely informative. I actually didn't know that you're not supposed to include your references in your CV. People are always saying, put your references so that we can just call them even before, we even contact you. Because I've also heard of stories whereby a reference is called, right, while you apply for a job, and they deny knowing you. They're like, we don't know who Courtney is. Courtney is who's that woman, or they give some sort of bad judgment. So that is actually a good tip, not including your references, because only telling them that you are going for another job is also going to give you enough time to tell them, why, if they might get called for a certain number, how they should also respond. So that was a very, very, very good tip.
Yeah.
But
So on that,
yeah.
let me just say one thing quickly. So if they ask you to list your references in your CV, then include it. But if they don't ask, then don't include it on your CV. And yeah, as you said, make sure that your references know that they are your references, so that, as you say, if they phone, they don't get the awkward, who is Joe again? I don't know Joe. So make sure your references know that you've listed them on your reference list.
Yeah, definitely. And apart from just references, how exactly do you deal with, for example, let's say I'm working, right, at company A, and I want to apply at company B, right? But then how do I tell company B that, listen, I want to leave company A because maybe say I'm being mistreated? How do I tell them in a good way? I don't want to make company A look bad, because at the end of the day, these guys are going to be my references, and I don't want to sound needy to company B, or like I'm bad mouthing company A. So how exactly do I go about saying that, listen, I have a job, but I would rather work for you? How do you tackle these kinds of questions?
Yeah, so it's definitely a very delicate question to get asked in an interview, and it's one that
Mm.
you very may well be asked. I was asked it before in an interview, and so the best thing to keep in mind is, as you say, never to badmouth the organization that, company A, even if they are mistreating you. Don't talk about the mistreatment at all. Kind of, you can shape it as, I'm really excited about what you do at company B. I really want to grow in this area of my professional life. You can talk about it in that kind of way. So, like, I really want to add value to company B because I'm really excited about the work that you guys do. And if you've done your research properly of the organization, you can say, I love what you are doing in Uganda and how it relates to what you're doing in Brazil, for example. Why you're excited about it. So never badmouth the company that you are, leaving, even if you're leaving because you like hate it, you're getting paid nothing. Don't It leaves a really bad impression on company B if you start bad mouthing company A, because then they'll think, oh, okay, are they going to bad mouth me, company B, to company C in the future? Um, yeah, but that actually specifically, if you Google how to answer that question, there's a lot that comes up online. That's where I get all my answers to like potential interview questions, and they give you like the best tips and things like that. So you can Google like how to answer, tell me about yourself in an interview, how to answer strengths and weaknesses in an interview, and they give you a lot of really handy tips and tricks.
Okay, but from you directly. Okay, I have a question from rather Abdul Alim, who says, how do you correctly respond to the question, why do you think you are perfect for this position?
I don't know if there is a perfect or a right way to answer the question, Abdul. It is a very good question. That's another one where you can Google how to answer that question and they'll tell you. But from my experience, it's really kind of connecting your skills, your qualities as a person, and your experience to what they need. And so showing that clear link between who you are and what you can do and what they need, is showing them. So a tip that I learned is they said that you should make a list of all the skills that you have. You should make a list of all the experiences that you have, and then see if you have stories where those two things cross over, and then pick out those stories to include in your interview. So when preparing for the interview and expecting this question, think about experiences that you've had or stories that you can share. So say, for example, let me take my job as an example. So my job, I do communications. It involves, graphic design, web design, social media, public relations, all these different things relating to communication. So if I was interviewing for my job that I have now, I would share stories about how I, um, you know, have executed campaigns before. Showing them, again, it's show, don't tell. Show them through your stories that you are a perfect fit, for it. But that's another one that you can Google and get some more specific insight on this question. If you type into Google how to answer that, if you are the right fit for a position on Google, it will give you
It
some
will
really
give me
incredible
the answer.
insights. Like, you'll be amazed.
Okay, just one last question before we dive into how to set up an interview and things like that. Um, I work for company A again, like I said, and I want to go to company B. All right, company B is amazing, and now company B is asking me, "Hey, Pinja, how much would you like for a salary?" Because honestly speaking, I've been asked this before. They told me, listen, we are going to offer you this amount of money. Will you be able to take it? Because then you wonder, okay, maybe company A is giving me way less than this. But why are they giving me such an amount? Should How do you, maybe from your own experience, how do you think I as a person can execute? How much money are you willing to take for a company? Kind of question.
Yeah. It's again a very delicate issue because it really depends. If company B can only pay you X and they say, would you be willing to accept X? It's a very tricky one. I think it's about finding a balance between knowing what you're worth and what your skills are worth, and also kind of balancing out. There's more to jobs than just what you get paid at the end of the month. There's what you can learn. There are growth opportunities within that organization. There are perhaps the work that, I mean, for example, for me working for Global Changemakers in the beginning, when I started, we couldn't afford to pay very much, speaking candidly, and I had to fundraise my own salary. But for me, what was so important to me was, the team culture, the work that we were doing, what I could learn. So I think it's about kind of balancing what you get paid with what is not money that you're getting paid, but you're getting paid, in responsibility, in skills, in the team culture, in lessons that you can learn, and access to mentors and things like this.
All right, so we have from Ankaman Vincent Bogarosi, who says, how do you deal with anxiety before going in for an interview? This is an everybody question, okay? Come on,
Yes.
heat us up with this one.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
All right, so I have a couple of things to say about this, but there's a few tried and tested techniques that I love. The one is called, you might have heard about it before, it's called the Superman pose. And literally, you put your hands on your hips and you just like stand like Superman, and kind of and you literally, it sounds ridiculous, but what it is when you open your body up, you expose your organs, then there's kind of a signal in your brain saying like, okay, we're safe. You're exposing your organs. It means there's no threat. Because if there's a threat, naturally you tend to close up your body like this, and then your brain is like, oh, is there danger? So if you open up your body, it kind of sends a signal to your brain that you are safe. So that's the first one. The second one, there is a technique called box breathing. And this is a technique that they teach to Navy SEALs in the United States, and also to people who are to firefighters, to policemen, to people who have very high stress jobs. And so basically, when you are stressed, so when you have a job interview, when you have an assignment due, when you have a fight with your friend, your brain doesn't know that you're safe, but it's like a bad situation. So your brain is thinking, oh my goodness, there's a lion behind the bush, I'm going to get eaten. Or, your body can't associate a physical, like it can't tell the difference between a physical threat and, something like a job interview. And so it puts your body into fight, flight, or freeze mode. We've all heard about fight or flight. So how you can manually get your body out of this is through breathing. And so what you do is you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds. So it's in, hold, out, hold for 4 seconds each. And by doing this, you trick your body and you tell your body, hey, we're safe, we're okay. And then your body starts producing adrenaline, it slows down your heartbeat, and you're able to relax a little bit more. Yeah. So that's yeah, I saw this question earlier.
We have her. She says, how can we check virtual jobs on such platforms? I think this one is very important because there's a lot of such platforms out there, a little too many, in fact, in my opinion. So how exactly do you because sometimes some of them look so real to a point where you apply and then you only find out that you were scammed once you go for this interview because it's in a very weird location. So how do you exactly distinguish fake and real job sites?
Sure. So it's a tough one. There are websites that can kind of show you that rank companies, and they talk about the culture. I think the one is called Glassdoor. So you can research the company beforehand. You can search on LinkedIn who has worked for that company. So say company A wants you to go for an interview and you've never heard of company A before, do they have a website? Do they have people who work from them on LinkedIn? And that's, I think, 2 key ways that you can tell the credibility of someone who wants to give you a job. But I think something about virtual jobs in particular, I think I saw a question there about how do you find virtual jobs? Yeah, I don't know if there's specific platforms for virtual jobs, but I know actually Opportunity Desk, not long ago, probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Opportunity Desk on Twitter tweeted a list of, I think it was like either 20 or 50 sites where you can find virtual jobs. So if you go over to Opportunity Desk's Twitter, Grace, also the founder of Opportunity Desk, she also retweeted it. So you can go to her Twitter to find virtual jobs. Some jobs, I think, with what we're facing now with coronavirus, I think many, many more jobs are going to become virtual because companies are seeing that you can work from home. So it really is kind of about keeping your eyes open. So yeah, I think with that, should I go into even flip the page. Should I go into how to set up for a job interview?
Definitely do it.
All right. So obviously, if you have an in-person interview, you go somewhere and then you sit in their office and you have the interview. But when you are setting up for a virtual job interview, it's either in your home or in your school or wherever you happen to be taking the interview. So there are a few things to think about when you think about setting up for a job interview. And the first thing I want to talk about is how you dress. So just because it's on a computer doesn't mean that you shouldn't dress professionally. Dress as though you were going to an interview. So dress professionally, on the top and the bottom. You don't want to, in case you stand up, to be wearing your pajama pants with your suit and tie. So wear, dress professionally, top and bottom. Something when it comes to being on a screen, and I'm sure once I said this, you may have noticed it on news channels, is to wear solid colors. So like I'm wearing solid black, you're wearing solid white. Solid colors are less distracting, whereas if you have shapes and prints and things like that, it's very distracting. And if you move in the screen, then it kind of makes it blurry. So yeah, so and something else that both of us are actually doing is to wear colors that contrast with your skin. So if you have fair skin, you wear like dark colors. If you have darker skin, you wear light colors. Because if I was wearing a white top right now, my face and my whole body would just blend into one. So it's good to have contrasting colors because sometimes the light on a call is weird. So let me just preface this by saying that everything you kind of do in the setup is to eliminate distractions. So everything that I'm talking about now, you don't want the interviewer just sitting there and being like, wait, is she wearing a t-shirt or, So you want to kind of eliminate these distractions. So the same thing with jewelry. Don't wear big flashy jewelry that will catch the light and distract them. When you have the background of wherever you're sitting, don't have things that are too busy or things that will be distracting. Normally I would do this with a blank wall in the background. I use my brother's room, but he's home now, so I can't use his wall anymore, and my walls all have pictures on them. Yeah, and then just one for the ladies. Bear in mind that when you're on screen, what will be shown is the top half of your body, and so dress appropriately so that the main focus of the interview is what you do and not what the interviewer might see, for example. Yeah. So then into the physical setup, I already kind of got into it in terms of having a blank background. But think about things like having a place with good lighting. So when we communicate with someone, 70% of communication is non-verbal. So it's facial expressions, it's posture, it's if we lean in, it's things like that. 70% of communication is non-verbal, and so it's really important to make a connection with people through a screen by having them see you. So, for example, if I move my light, then you no longer can see me. Okay, so now I think yeah, you know what I mean. So make sure that they can see you clearly, and that you in the screen is your face. The next one is to choose somewhere that is quiet, with no background noise, if need be. I mean, for me, I have dogs, and so my brother's busy babysitting my dogs upstairs so that they don't come and bark down here. Having a simple, plain background is also important. Then the next thing is having your computer lens being eye level with you, so that it's not kind of like, this awkward angle or this awkward angle. Have the lens be eye level with you. So if you look into the lens, it looks like you are looking someone in the eye and that you're having a conversation with them. If you're on your phone, don't do that thing where you put your phone on the table and kind of look down at your phone, because it's really awkward for the interviewer. And again, all of this is just to eliminate distractions. So yeah, make sure you have a strong internet connection wherever you are. If need be, make sure that, or ask your family members to all disconnect from the Wi-Fi on all their devices so that you have a strong internet connection. Leave your phone in another room on silent. You don't need your phone unless you need to communicate with the interviewer, but that can be done over email. So leave your phone. You don't want it beeping. You don't want to check it. Have a pen and a piece of paper, and have a glass of water in case you get hoarse while you're speaking, as you've seen me do throughout this. So that's a little bit on kind of the physical setup. Next thing, before the call, it's advisable to have a quick call with a friend or a family member where you test the sound and the audio to make sure that it's working properly. To go to the bathroom before the session, as you would in a normal session. I mean, sometimes these interviews can go on for an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how well it goes or how many questions they have. And so you don't want to be able to interrupt the interview to go to the bathroom. The next thing is to be at your laptop and be online and ready 5 to 10 minutes early. And the reason is that the interviewer might start early, and if you're not there, then it can be a really bad kind of reflection on you. As in life, if you are not punctual, then leaves a really bad impression. So be ready, be seated, do your box breathing, stand with Superman pose, whatever you need to do until the interview starts, and then wait for the interviewer to start the meeting. So don't start the meeting yourself. Give them that power dynamic of starting the interview themselves. So that is kind of the setup of the call. Just a few things that you can do to kind of make a difference, eliminate distractions, and create that connection. So yeah, I think now's a good time to ask some questions again before I go into the actual how to handle the call. If there are questions.
All right. Unfortunately, due to time, we're gonna have to ask just like a few more questions, and then we're gonna have to wrap this up. But for the viewers out there, give me one word that describes Courtney. Pardon?
One thing that's important, I think, if we're going to wrap up soon, let me quickly run through how to handle yourself in the call, because there are also some specific things here, if that's okay. I'll take like 3 to 5 minutes-ish. All right, so handling yourself in a virtual, I'm just going to run through this, guys, so speed right, okay. So how to handle yourself in a virtual call. So something that's important, look at the little camera on your screen and not at the people. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, I've been looking at my camera, and so it feels like I'm looking you in the eye. I don't know if you picked up on that. Whereas if I look at myself or if I look at Benji, then I'm not looking at you anymore. See the difference? So you look at your screen. If need be, put a post-it note on your screen that points up to the camera to tell you to look there. And if you want to look at yourself, minimize the window on your computer and put it just under the screen so that you can see yourself without it being too obvious. But eye contact is so important in terms of how the impression that you leave on someone. It projects competence, it projects confidence, and it builds connection. So really look at the lens as much as possible. When you greet them, just wait a couple of seconds for the call to start so that things can settle in, and then greet them warmly as you would in a normal kind of setting. Don't wait for them to kind of greet you, just greet them as if you were greeting them in person. As I said before, your posture. 70% of communication is nonverbal. Sit up straight, nod, move your body. Be conscious of your facial expression. If you're concentrating, nod, listen to them, lean in if you're engaged. Have you seen how I've been moving? If you're animated, you can move your hands, just not too much because it makes a blur on the screen. So just imagine you're in a room with them and imagine that they are watching you. So sit up straight and conduct yourself as if you were in an in-person interview. Something to remember is to speak slowly and clearly, and sometimes a little bit more loudly than you would in normal. This is because there sometimes are little delays in when you are having an online call. I'm sure you've all experienced it. So speak a little bit more slowly. Pause. After they've spoken, give like 1 or 2 seconds before you answer. So if they ask you a question, just wait 1, 2, and then answer. And the reason for this is in case they want to add something to the question, then you don't interrupt them or interrupt the discussion by answering, and then it's awkward. So just like wait for 2 beats before you answer. Technical glitches happen. There's nothing you can do about it, but it presents an opportunity. So if your internet crashes or if your laptop dies or anything like this happens, how you respond to that situation will show your potential employer how you act under pressure and when things get stressful. So if technical glitches do happen, remain calm, be composed. If you can, send them a quick email and say, hi, my internet just died. I'll be back on as soon as possible. all the while remaining calm, because that shows how you respond under pressure. The next one is when you get asked a question, don't be afraid to ask for time to think. So you can say, may I please have a minute to think about it? And don't be afraid to kind of ask for that time if you do need to think about it. There's a rule it's my favorite rule about communication, and it's called KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Basically, all that means is say things in as simple way as possible, in as few words as possible, and in a way that everyone can understand. If you are concise in your answers, it shows or it projects competence and confidence. So keep it simple, stupid. Short answers, as simple as possible. The next one is when you get an opportunity at the end of the session to ask your questions that you've prepared, have a pen and a paper ready and make notes when they're speaking. Again, this is about leaving a good impression. You're showing them that what they say has value. You're showing that you appreciate the time that they are taking to answer your questions. And yeah, that is in the interview. Then as a last thing, after you've done the interview, the next morning, you should send a follow-up email to thank them for their time, to express enthusiasm for the role. Say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for answering my questions. I really appreciated it. It was great to learn more about company ABC, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to be able to contribute to your team or to create value for company ABC. And the reason why you do this is it's good manners, number one, but number two is it puts you in the front of their mind after the interview has happened. So if they have 6 or 7 interviews in a row, they may forget you, but by emailing them in the morning to say thank you, they're like, oh, Courtney did something. Oh, I remember Courtney, yeah, she had a good interview. So yeah, that is the thank you email. And yeah, guys, everything that I've spoken about today, you can find on Google. Don't be afraid if you missed some things. How do you handle an interview? Okay, I'm just going to answer this question quickly. How do you handle an interview that didn't specify the job description? I think it's very unlikely that you will have an interview where the job description hasn't been given to you. And I think if they've scheduled an interview with you and they haven't shared the job description, you are perfectly within your rights. It's not rude to ask for the job description, because you can't apply for a job if you don't know what you expected to do. So yeah, I would say ask them for the job description if you can't find it on their website or somewhere online. So yeah, guys, I know I threw a lot at you. I hope it was valuable. Remember that the people on the other end of the computer are human beings. The worst thing that can happen is that you don't get the job and your life won't change. You didn't have the job now. If you don't have the job later, nothing changes in your life. So if that's the worst thing that can happen, you can just relax, be yourself. They're human beings, and yeah, just shine. Yeah.
Oh, Courtney, that was amazing. I actually like how you executed this little interview of ours by way of basically sort of answering questions before they even like asked by the viewers rather. So that one I definitely commend you, and thank you so much for this wonderful session. In fact, I'm pretty sure that our people have learned a lot. See, they're even thanking you before the show's ended. Courtney, your questions, your answers, your execution, your angle, the smile, the clothes, and everything. It's almost as if you did you know that this would be some sort of job? In fact, you did. So I'm glad that you actually prepared, also in form of dressing, because sometimes we need to see it to believe it, because you can't come and tell me that if I am fair in melanin rather, I should dress up in white clothes or black clothes, but you're not doing the same. So I'm actually very, very thankful that you showed us by way of action yourself. So yeah, guys, just in case you guys need a recap, this is Courtney Gehle. She is from South Africa, an amazing entrepreneur, co-founder, co-this, co-that, manager this, manager that. The lady knows how to do her thing. So you guys, you better keep those tips and tricks because Courtney is amazing. So before you leave, anything you want to tell us, maybe word of motivation, way forward, what's Courtney, what's gonna pop in Courtney's life right after this? What are you looking forward to?
Sure. So, guys, if you want to get in touch with me, I'm on social media at Courtney Gehle on all platforms. So you're welcome to get in touch with me and I can answer some questions. But I think just in terms of like words of motivation, guys. The reason why I've experienced whatever success that I've experienced in my life is, number one, opportunity desk, because Grace is amazing and the opportunity and your team is amazing, and like I just find all my opportunities on opportunity desk. But number two is that if you don't apply for something, if you don't apply for the job, you definitely won't get the job. But if you apply, there's at least a chance. So, believe in yourself. I know it's something I really struggle with, is self-belief and self-doubt. So, believe in yourself. If you know that you're right for the role, if it's your dream job, apply, because if you don't apply, you definitely won't get the job. Google is your friend, guys. I have learned everything that I know about doing my job now on Google. So if you are uncertain about something, how to answer questions in an interview, I would really, really recommend how to optimize your LinkedIn profile, how to create the perfect CV, how to create the perfect cover letter are things you should Google if you're applying for jobs. But just believe in yourself, guys. Really, if you don't apply, the answer will definitely be no. And the worst thing that can happen is that you don't get the job, but you will still be fine and life will still go on. So thanks so much, guys. I really hope that you found value in this. Yeah, it's been a pleasure for me.
Wow, that is really good. I love how you kept on mentioning opportunity desk, because indeed this is the platform for opportunities. Hustlers, as I call us. We gotta hustle every single time. To get a job, we have to go look for it. No one's just gonna come here and give you an opportunity. You gotta create it for yourself, by terms of finding it out yourself. Because if it's given, then you won't even be excited about it, because you know that you didn't work for it. So Courtney, again, thank you for hustling with us and teaching us few tips on how to get out there and be a step forward, especially in this virtual world. I'm really grateful for your time, and for having your brother babysit your dogs for you while you're here with us. uh so yeah, guys, thank you so much, Courtney, and everybody else that was tuned in this evening. This was definitely informative. In fact, I think I'm gonna watch the session live again, just so if I could, before I get another job interview, I go through the tips and tricks again with Courtney. So yeah, please, you are amazing and stay that way. Maybe we'll have you again next time for more tips and tricks. You keep updating yourself, and you'll get more chances here. Thank you so much. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Now that we're going to reach the end of our show very soon, give me one word that you've described, brother. If what when you've watched the show, right? One word that describes Courtney and this session as a whole. Was it informative? Did you like Courtney's hairstyle? Oh, look, see, we already have. Oh, this is amazing. Tenda Raphael Makanzambi says, a nice session. Enjoyed the tips and tricks and keep up the good work. Courtney, you get an A for this one. And Chris Obiero also says, this is great. Oh wow, Courtney. Like I said, this is amazing. I see all these comments. Thank you. Jerome Roy also says, thanks so much. Courtney, you've done a great job once you get all these. Come on, they just keep coming. It's interesting and helpful. Look at you, Courtney. Look
You
at
guys are so
you. These
kind. Thank you so much. Thank you
This
so
is
much, guys.
amazing. This is amazing, guys. Keep them coming. Retweet, share all over, because we don't want to be stingy with these kinds of opportunities. We want everybody out there to get a fair opportunity in this job world, because, times are tough. But there's always an opportunity. Like I always say, we just have to know how to adapt ourselves into it. Like you said yourself, you just gotta learn the skill. If you don't know it, you can always learn it there. That's why we learn. So yeah, guys, even Josephine Adeti says, lovely. Courtney, lovely. I don't know if it's the hairstyle or the background or your, representation. I don't know what it is, but she just loves it. Okay, she loves it. Even Ajoli Chiamo Adako says, optical discussion. This is amazing. So Courtney, again, hats off to you, lady. You keep upgrading, you keep applying for those jobs, and keep Googling. That's your best friend right there. All right, you keep doing it. You keep definitely doing it. Like I said, guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. Thank you so much for sitting with us this evening. It's never easy, but if you know what you're worth, you're definitely gonna stay in tune for us. So yeah, my name's Binja. I'm the host for tonight on Opportunity Desk, and that right there is Courtney Gehle, who was our host for tonight. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.